Back in 2013, I was doing an Advent series on Doctor Who. I did it 2 years in a row. It nearly killed me trying to produce an episode every day. During that series, I was asked the question how I could be a Christian and be a fan of Doctor Who, and was specifically asked to comment on The Runaway Bride and The Rings of Akhaten. I'm not going to repeat the entirety of my answer. If you want to go and find it, you can. There's a link up there in the card. But in brief, I basically said you don't have to entirely agree with the worldview of a show in order to watch it. Otherwise, most of us would watch very little. But in bringing up The Rings of Akhaten, I was reminded of something that somewhat troubled me when the episode originally aired, which is the basis of what I'm going to talk about today. I don't think it can be said that any particular worldview underpins the entirety of Doctor Who. Too many people have had a say in how the show goes for that to be the case. However, certain things tend to hold true for the majority of the history of the show, and one of those things can be summed up by this clip from the Sarah Jane Adventures.
What about the disappearances? An entire family vanishes into thin air. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, that's just sinister.
But I've seen so many strange things in my life, wonderful and frightening. Yet all of it had a scientific explanation of some kind. The trouble with ghosts is there simply isn't any scientific basis for them to exist.
Occasionally things are left ambiguous, the Seeker in the Rebus operation being a prime example.
Come to the circle, come to the bones. Show, show, show what I seek. Ah! I see him. He is at the place of fires.
The story offers no explanation for her power, and it seems that for once we may have witnessed the genuinely supernatural. Similarly, the origin of the beast in the Satan pit is left to deliberately challenge the Doctor's worldview.
Before time and light and space and matter, before the cataclysm, before this universe was created.
That's impossible. No life could have existed back then.
Is that your religion?
It's a belief.
However, in pretty much every other case, a scientific or science-fictional explanation will be given for such events.
Well, telepathy and precognition are normal in anyone whose childhood was spent near a time fisher like the one in the wood.
He's as bad as she is. What's a time fisher?
It's a weakness in the fabric of space and time. Every haunted place has one, doesn't it? That's why they're haunted. It's a time distortion.
Behold, Doctor, men to carrionites are nothing but puppets.
Now, you might call that magic. I'd call that a DNA replication module.
What use is your science now?
When it comes to religion in Doctor Who, it's very likely that anyone who follows a god of any kind will end up at loggerheads with the Doctor. And this is usually because said people like to sacrifice the Doctor and his companions to their god. It also tends to be the case that these gods are explained in terms of superior technology or other scientific explanations, which brings us back to what we've just been talking about. This trope appeared again in The Rings of Akhaten, where the Doctor comes across a society with a real-life trolley problem. What's the trolley problem, you ask? Well, here's me from 2017 to explain that. The trolley problem, or in this case, the train problem. If you're unfamiliar with this thought experiment, here's how it goes. You have a train barrelling down the track, and somewhere that way are 5 people chained to the track who are going to die when the train passes over them. You, however, are up here with a lever that can switch the points and divert the train away from those 5 people. However, there's one person down that track who will be killed by the train once you've made the switch. Which is the most ethical decision to make? Pull the lever or don't pull the lever? Let's make it a little bit more complicated. You're standing here, and this time there's no lever to pull. There are 5 people who are going to die. The train's barrelling towards them. What do? Well, you have a fat friend who you could push off the bridge into the path of the oncoming train. The train will be stopped by the death of that one person. Do you push your friend off to save the 5 people? And this is essentially the situation we find on Akhaten. Every 1,000 years they sacrifice a young girl to their god to stop it waking up and devouring them all. The Doctor and Clara become embroiled in one such event of sacrifice, and as is the Doctor's way, he wants to step in and prevent this. There's a problem. Mary believes that she needs to be sacrificed in order to save her people. The Doctor has to persuade her to let him help. What is it that he can say to shake her worldview?
A god chose me.
It's not a god. It'll feed on your soul, but that doesn't make it a god. It is a vampire, and you don't need to give yourself to him. Hey, do you mind if I tell you a story, one you might not have heard? All the elements in your body were forged many, many millions of years ago in the heart of a faraway star that exploded and died. That explosion scattered those elements across the desolations of deep space. After so many millions of years, these elements came together to form new stars and new planets, and on it went. The elements came together and burst apart, forming shoes and ships and sealing wax and cabbages and kings, until eventually they came together to make you. You are unique in the universe. There is only one Mary Galel, and there will never be another.
While you're pondering that, here is a quick quiz. 1. How are the Autons defeated in Spearhead from Space? 2. Why does the Sea Devil base blow up in the Sea Devils? 3. How is the Sontaran invasion of Gallifrey ended in the Invasion of Time? And 4. How is the Wire defeated on Coronation Day in the Idiot's Lantern? If your answers were an ECT machine, a device that reverses the polarity of the neutron flow, the DMAT gun, and a special video recorder, then congratulations, you've scored 4 points. Equally, if you said, the Doctor did it in each case, then congratulations, you've also scored 4 points. You see, there are 2 levels of explanation going on here. One, the nuts and bolts scientific explanation, and the other, the agency explanation. Neither is in conflict with the other. In fact, you need both of the explanations together to make what happened on screen work. And in the same way, there's no inherent contradiction between saying these molecules came together because of these millions of years of processes and God created a person. They're 2 different levels of explanation. Now, you can make those explanations come into conflict if you have certain beliefs about God and certain beliefs about science, but there isn't an inherent contradiction there. So, although I find the Doctor's speech lovely and poetic, I think it fails in the purpose that he has for it. So there's one problem that I have with the Doctor's speech. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that the argument works and follows through. Having made that argument, having given that scientific explanation, the Doctor then goes on to suggest what worth that might bestow upon Mary.
Getting rid of that existence isn't a sacrifice, it is a waste.
So, if I don't, then everyone else
We'll be fine.
How?
There's always a way.
You promise?
Cross my hearts.
You see, I'm left scratching my head at that point, because the one doesn't necessarily follow from the other. Just because something is rare doesn't mean that it is valuable. Just because something is unique doesn't mean that it is valuable. And if that's the only reason that the Doctor has for saying that Mary has value, then he's a massive hypocrite. Why? Well, because he's killed many people over the years, or allowed people to die, in order that others might be saved. Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen, Solon, or in a more recent example to this one, Solomon. All those things that he says to Mary apply equally to Solomon, and yet he's willing to send him to his death in order that others might be saved. You might be thinking at this point that I think the Doctor shouldn't have intervened. Not at all. I think he should have. I just think that the rationale that the show gives him for intervening isn't good enough. To build on a purely scientific foundation is not to get to the reasons why the Doctor gets involved and does good things, why he is on the side of right. And I think we all need such a foundation. You know what mine is? I'd love to hear in the comments what yours is.